What is it like to come back to your work, your first book, 10 years after you put it out?
It's really cool. I mean, it's so I tried to like put the feelings of what it's like to come back to it in the
Yeah.
introduction. I started writing the introduction earlier this year, and it's not. I've read Milk and Honey since it came out 10 years ago. I've read it cover to cover maybe three times.
Yeah.
Twice when I had to record an audiobook, and a third time this year when I had to
Yes.
write, put together the 10-year anniversary edition. And, I feel like sometimes my work, like I cringe at myself. We all do, I think, when we read our work, and it's been around for many years. But when I read it earlier this year, I was like impressed with my younger self.
Oh,
I was like, wow, that teenager, she kind of was like cooler than she gave herself credit for. And she
that's
kind of
nice.
was like, she never celebrated herself. Yet,
Mm,
how brilliant was she to lead me to the doorstep of the woman I am today?
yeah.
She delivered me to this moment, and that is phenomenal. And so it's very bittersweet as well because I get to I feel like she created so fearlessly,
Yeah.
and she had very little self-doubt, but that's because she had nothing to lose,
Yeah.
really. She had no audience. This wasn't her dream. It wasn't
Right.
even in her reality. So she was just totally driven by passion.
There's like an unencumberedness to doing your first thing because
Yes,
you don't know what you don't know and
exactly.
you're just doing it.
Exactly. And then the fear came after,
Yeah.
and the self doubt came after, and all the other things that aren't fun. And I was like, oh, I don't think I can do it again. And yet I wrote many books. I remember I wrote book 2, and I still was like, I'll never do it again. And I
Yeah.
wrote book 3. I think now I'm like, okay, it will be hard. It'll never
Yeah.
get easy, but I will do it again. But it's funny because I'm often referring back to my 21-year-old self for inspiration. And
That's cool.
I'm like, let me tap into her strength and let me tap into her fearlessness. So that's kind of been
No,
how
I can relate to that because I just did a 10-year anniversary of my first book. I think my first feeling was I can't have a 10-year-old book. Like I don't feel like I could do that because it also just feels so fresh.
weird.
Yeah, it feels like it just happened. And then the other part that struck me was like, because during the pandemic I was trying to put my son to sleep one day, and so I was like, I was like, I'd read all his stuff. He wasn't going to bed. I was like, okay, I'm going to read you one of my books, like as a punishment. And I was reading it. And what struck me about it was like, I was like, where did this person get off? I meant that in like a nice way. Like
Yeah.
I was like, how did this 24-year-old possibly think they knew any of this? And then so in some cases like I didn't know and it was wrong, right? Like and I went back and fixed that. But then the other part of me was like, how did I know something that I really had no business knowing? Like there's where
Like
you
the
see those,
audacity.
yeah, the
Yeah.
flashes of like how could you have gotten something right that maybe you hadn't even fully experienced
Yeah.
yet?
It's so cool because I feel like I totally relate to you. And it's like, I do feel like ideas sometimes they work through us.
Yes.
So you don't know, but the universe chose you to deliver that message. And that's pretty
Sure.
cool. But I feel you. I mean, I read, when I was reading Milk and Honey again earlier this year, I was like, what?
Yeah.
And the audacity to put it out,
Yes.
it's absolutely wild.
Yeah, then not going, how would this look for a insert age person to be saying this and to just say it as that person? Like to me the enemy of art, good art, is self-consciousness. Like the like,
Yes.
how is this going to come off? What are people going to think? You have to be in the moment and just do it. And I imagine with poetry it's even harder because poetry is more of a, I don't want to say antiquated, but it's not, it's a thing so many people do badly and so few people get to be able to do.
Yeah.
And so there's probably something about poetry too where you're just like an imposter syndrome feeling that would creep into doing poetry, I imagine.
I don't know. I think when I'm writing, especially, I mean, it hasn't been like this all the time. When I was writing Milk and Honey, I was so present
Yeah.
with each piece. And so in those moments, I felt truly free. And
Yeah.
I was writing without a focus on outcome or result and writing without judgment.
Yeah.
And so that was very freeing. And in a way, because I'm writing about my own experiences, that's freeing. Because I'm like, yeah, you might not like it, but it's my experience. You can't take my story away from me.
Sure.
So, and I struggled with book 2 and 3 because then I was thinking about the outcome and I
Yeah.
was thinking about the result. And when I'm thinking about that, then as I'm writing, the judgment is right there. And that's when the writer's block comes out for me. But I'm finally, 10 years later, back in a place where I am writing without judgment.